The sun burned high over the endless African plains, its light rippling across golden grass that bent and danced with the wind. A thin river wound its way through the valley, a borderline that for generations had separated two tribes who shared the same sky but never the same peace. On one side, warriors sharpened spears, painted their faces with ash, and spoke in voices heavy with anger. On the other, men beat drums of war, calling young boys to carry shields heavier than their small shoulders could bear. Amid the clash of voices and the restless air of preparation, a young girl walked quietly along the riverbank. Her name was Amara, no more than 14, slight in frame but carrying eyes that seemed far older. She was the daughter of no chief, the sister of no warrior, just a child who fetched water and gathered firewood. But she listened, and she saw what the men refused to see. The night before, she had watched as her mother wept into her hands, whispering that another war meant another season of burying fathers and brothers. Amara had not slept. She heard the echo of drums from across the river and felt their rhythm beat against her chest like a warning. By morning, the men of her tribe gathered beneath the ancient baobab tree, the one that stretched its roots deep into the soil as if it wanted to hold the earth together when people could not. The chief raised his staff, calling the young to step forward. They came, eager and trembling, each one seeking pride, vengeance, or glory. Amara stood at the edge, hidden in the crowd of women and children, watching. She could not understand why they shouted so loudly about honor when she could already smell the smoke of burning huts, already hear the cries of women who would lose their sons. Her heart pounded in her chest, her lips dry as dust, and yet something inside her grew louder than her fear. When the chief declared that war would come with the rising of the next moon, Amara stepped forward. Her small bare feet pressed against the red soil, and her voice, though soft at first, cut through the heavy air. "Why must we fight?" she asked. The circle fell silent. Men turned, frowning, their faces painted with streaks of anger and disbelief. A child had spoken where only warriors spoke. The chief's eyes narrowed, and the crowd murmured, uneasy. Amara did not retreat. She looked into the eyes of men twice and 3 times her age. "Do you not remember the last war? Do you not remember the graves we dug, the fields left empty, the children who starved because fathers did not return?" One warrior spat into the dirt. "You are a girl. What do you know of war?" "I know its cost," she answered, her voice trembling but steady. "I know it takes more than it gives. You speak of honor, but what honor is there in leaving children fatherless? What honor is there in burning fields that should feed us?" The men shifted, some laughing harshly, others looking away as if her words stung more than they wished to admit. The chief lifted his staff again. "Enough. Go back, child. This is not your place." But Amara did not move. She felt something rising within her, like the river swelling after the rains. She thought of the faces of her friends across the river, children who looked just like her, who carried the same clay pots, who chased goats in the dust. Did they deserve to die because men could not lay down pride? "If you will not listen to me," she said, her voice breaking but clear, "then I will go to them. I will stand between your spears and theirs. If you wish to kill, then you will kill me first, because I will not let you destroy us again." A gasp ran through the crowd. Her mother cried out, rushing forward to pull her back, but Amara stood firm. Her words hung in the air like smoke that could not be ignored. The chief's face hardened, yet his eyes flickered with doubt. That night, whispers spread through the village. Some called her foolish, a child drunk on dreams. Others, in secret, admitted that her courage had shaken something deep inside them. Mothers prayed for her, old women blessed her under their breath, and children followed her with wide eyes as though she were a spirit walking among them. Amara herself did not sleep. She sat by the river, staring at the dark silhouette of the enemy campfires across the water. The drums had stopped, but their silence was heavier than sound. She thought of what tomorrow might bring, whether she would be struck down for daring to speak, or whether her words could build a bridge where only blood had flowed before. As dawn bled into the horizon, painting the sky with fire, Amara rose. She carried no spear, no shield, only a strip of white cloth torn from her mother's robe, tied around her arm. With bare feet she crossed the shallow river, each step sending ripples that broke the reflection of two skies becoming one. On the opposite bank, warriors stirred, surprised to see a girl walk toward them alone. They raised their spears, shouting warnings, but Amara did not stop. Her small frame stood against their towering bodies, her eyes unwavering. "I am Amara," she called. "I come with no weapon, no hatred, only words. If you will not listen, then strike me now, and know that you have killed a child before you kill men." The enemy chief, scarred from battles past, stepped forward. His voice was rough as stone. "Why do you come, child of our enemies?" Amara swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Because I am not your enemy. I am your daughter, your sister, though we are born on different banks of the same river. I come because if you fight, my people will die. Your people will die. And what will remain? Empty huts. Hungry children. Graves." The warriors shifted, murmuring. Some laughed cruelly, but others looked at her with eyes clouded by memory, remembering their own losses. The chief frowned, gripping his spear. "You think words can stop what blood has demanded for generations?" "I think only words can," Amara said softly. "Because blood has already given us nothing but sorrow." Silence stretched long and heavy. The wind stirred the grass. For a moment, even the earth seemed to wait. Then one old man stepped forward from among the enemy. His hair was white, his back bent, his eyes tired from seeing too many battles. He laid his hand on the chief's arm. "Listen to her," he said. "For once, listen to the voice of a child, not the echoes of our anger." Amara's breath caught, her chest rising with hope. But the story was only beginning. The young warriors shifted uneasily, their spears still upright but their eyes darting from the old man to Amara, then back to their chief. The morning light glistened on their painted faces, revealing not only pride but doubt, a flicker of something they did not want to admit. The chief's jaw tightened, his hand gripping his spear so hard his knuckles turned pale against dark skin. "You are bold, girl," he said at last. "But boldness does not change the past. Your people burned our fields. They killed our sons. And yours killed ours," Amara answered. "But must we bleed forever for the sins of yesterday?" The wind carried her words across the river, where men from her own tribe stood watching, their spears raised, expecting her to fall. Instead, they saw her stand taller than any of them had ever dared. The enemy chief studied her, his scarred face unreadable. Then, with a voice deep and sharp, he ordered his warriors to lower their spears. "Let her speak." Amara's heart raced, her knees trembling, but she steadied herself. "I am not here to defend one side or the other. I am here to defend the children yet unborn, who deserve to live without digging graves before they can even carry water. You say war is strength, but is it strength to repeat the same wounds again and again? Or is true strength to stop the hand before it strikes?" The old man beside the chief nodded slowly. "The girl speaks with the wisdom of the ancestors. Perhaps they have sent her." The chief turned his gaze toward the river, where Amara's people stood, watching in silence. He raised his spear high, pointing across the water. "If your people wish peace, let their chief come and say so with his own tongue, not through the mouth of a girl." Amara's chest tightened. She turned slowly toward her own side of the river, where her people gathered, their faces tense and uncertain. She raised her small arms and called out, her voice carried by the wind. "If you wish for life more than death, come. Let words speak instead of spears." For a moment, nothing moved. The chief of her tribe stood motionless under the baobab tree, his staff heavy in his hand. Men muttered, some calling for him to ignore her, others urging him to end this before it began. Then, slowly, he stepped forward, his figure tall and proud, though his steps were heavy with years and memory. The crowd parted, and he began to cross the river. Gasps rose on both sides as the water lapped against his legs. His staff glistened in the sun, and the weight of his presence seemed to press silence onto the plains. He reached the far bank, standing across from the enemy chief, their eyes meeting like two storms colliding. Amara stood between them, her heart hammering. She looked from one to the other, then stepped back, giving them space. The enemy chief's voice was iron. "Will you end this, or will you let our children bury us as we buried our fathers?" Her chief's eyes narrowed. "And will you end your hatred, or will you pass it down like a curse to your sons?" The air was so heavy it felt like the earth itself held its breath. Then Amara spoke again, her voice small but piercing. "If you cannot do this for yourselves, then do it for us. For the children. For the ones who chase goats, who fetch water, who laugh without knowing why you fight. Do not steal their laughter with your anger." The chief stood in silence. Then, slowly, her chief lowered his staff. Across from him, the enemy chief let his spear drop into the dust. Murmurs rippled through both tribes. For the first time in years, no war cry followed. Amara closed her eyes, relief flooding her. She had not ended their hatred, but she had planted a seed. That night, the two tribes gathered on the riverbank, their fires burning side by side. Food was shared, cautious words exchanged. The men sat stiffly at first, their hands never far from their weapons, but slowly, laughter returned, tentative and fragile like a bird testing its wings. Children from both sides played together, chasing each other in the dust, their giggles ringing like a song that had long been forgotten. Amara sat near the fire, her mother's arm around her, her heart swelling. Yet she knew peace was not yet won. It was like a fragile pot of clay, one careless hand could shatter it. The next morning proved her right. From the shadows of the forest came men who had not been at the river the night before, warriors who carried hatred too deeply in their veins to accept peace. They called Amara a witch, a child who had shamed her people, who had robbed them of their honor. They whispered that she had cursed the warriors into weakness, that no girl should have such power. One of them stood in the center of the village, his voice thundering. "We are being made fools. Peace is weakness. Our ancestors demand blood, not treaties. If the chiefs will not fight, then we will." The crowd stirred, anger rising once more. Fear gripped Amara's chest, but she would not let it silence her. She stepped forward again, her small figure against the storm of their fury. "You speak of ancestors," she said. "But do you think they wanted us to suffer as they did? Do you think they smile from the spirit world when they see children crying for fathers who will never return?" The warrior sneered. "You are only a girl. Why should we listen?" "Because the men have spoken for generations, and their words have given us nothing but graves," she answered. "Perhaps it is time you listen to the voices you ignore." Her courage lit a spark. Mothers began to murmur in agreement, their voices low but rising. Children clung to their fathers' arms, their wide eyes filled with fear, begging silently for peace. Even some warriors looked away, their faces troubled. But the men who hated peace were not ready to surrender. That night, they gathered in secret, plotting to silence Amara forever. The night air was thick with smoke from dying fires, and the moon hung low, casting long shadows across the village. Amara lay awake beside her mother, staring at the thatched roof of their hut. Sleep would not come. She could feel unease stirring like restless spirits in the wind. Somewhere beyond the walls, men whispered, voices sharp, plotting. Her skin prickled with dread, though she could not hear the words clearly. At dawn, she rose early and went to the river, carrying her clay pot. The water rippled softly, and across the bank she saw the enemy tribe doing the same, women bending low to fill their pots, children laughing as they splashed one another. For the first time, she felt the river was not a border but a mirror. Yet the peace of that moment was fragile, trembling like water under the touch of wind. As she stood, balancing the pot on her head, a figure approached. It was one of the warriors who had spoken so fiercely against her the day before. His eyes burned with anger, and his words lashed like a whip. "You shame us, Amara. You make the warriors weak before our enemies. You are poison." Amara steadied her pot, though her heart raced. "If speaking for peace is poison, then may the whole land drink it until war is dead." The warrior stepped closer, his hand tightening on the spear he carried even though it was dawn and no battle was called. For a moment Amara thought he might strike her, but another voice rang out. "Leave her." It was the old woman, Nia, known as the village seer, her back bent, her hair silver like the moonlight. She walked with a staff carved long ago, her eyes clouded with age but bright with something deeper. "This child speaks with the breath of the ancestors," she said firmly. "Touch her, and you invite their wrath." The warrior spat into the dirt and turned away, but his glare promised that his anger was not finished. Nia placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "Child, you carry a heavy fire. Be careful, for fire can warm, but it can also burn." That evening, the chiefs of both tribes met again by the river, their people gathered in a circle around them. They spoke cautiously of planting crops side by side, of trading goats and grain, of sharing the river instead of guarding it with spears. Amara watched with hope swelling in her chest, but she saw also the men on the edges, their eyes narrow, their bodies tense, waiting for any excuse to break this fragile truce. Days passed. For the first time in years, children from both tribes played together freely by the riverbank, chasing each other in the dust, their laughter carrying over the plains. Women traded baskets, beads, and stories. Hunters walked together into the forest, though they carried spears not for each other but for the wild beasts that roamed. Yet still, whispers grew. The men who despised peace claimed Amara had bewitched the chiefs, that her voice had twisted the minds of warriors into weakness. Some said she must be silenced before the tribes lost their strength. One night, as the moon hid behind clouds, those men gathered in the shadows of the baobab tree. They lit no fire, but their eyes glowed with hatred. "She is a curse," one said. "If she remains, we will forget how to fight. Our sons will grow soft. Our enemies will rise against us when we are weak." Another slammed his spear into the ground. "Then she must die. Quietly, before dawn. A snake's head must be cut before it bites." But unknown to them, a boy had been listening. Keto, no more than 10, small and thin, had followed them out of curiosity. His heart froze when he heard their words. Without waiting, he ran through the darkness to Amara's hut, shaking her awake. "They will kill you," he whispered, his voice trembling. "The warriors, they plan it for tonight." Amara's blood turned to ice. Her mother gasped, clutching her hands. For a moment, fear almost paralyzed her, but then something stronger rose, resolve. She stood, her eyes blazing. "If they wish to kill me, then let them do it before the eyes of everyone, not like cowards in the dark." Before her mother could stop her, Amara stepped out into the night, walking straight toward the baobab tree. The boy followed, terrified but unwilling to leave her. The warriors froze when they saw her appear out of the shadows, the girl they had plotted against standing before them unafraid. "If you believe my words are poison," she said, her voice clear, "then kill me here. But know this, if you spill my blood, it will not bring back your sons. It will not heal your anger. It will not give you honor. It will only plant more hatred, and that hatred will swallow you whole." The men hesitated, their spears trembling in their hands. The silence stretched long, heavy. Then, one of them, his face twisted with rage, lunged forward. Before his spear could strike, a roar broke the night. The old seer, Nia, stood with her staff raised high. Behind her came women, mothers, and children, awakened by the noise. They surrounded Amara, forming a wall of bodies. "You will not touch her," Nia thundered. "For she is not alone. She carries the hope of us all." The warriors faltered, their fury clashing with the weight of so many eyes upon them. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their spears, though anger still burned in their hearts. Amara stood tall among the circle, her chest heaving but her eyes steady. If you will not fight for peace, then at least do not fight against it. Let us build something stronger than war. The night ended without blood. But Amara knew the struggle was far from over. Peace was not won with one speech or one act of courage. It had to be defended, every day, against the shadows in men's hearts. As dawn broke, painting the plains in gold, she whispered to herself, I will not stop. Even if they call me a curse. Even if they seek my life. I will not stop. The sun rose on a day heavy with tension. Though the warriors had lowered their spears the night before, their anger lingered like smoke that refused to clear. Mothers moved nervously through the village, fathers watched their sons with unease, and children, though they played by the river, carried whispers of fear in their laughter. Amara walked among them quietly, her bare feet brushing the dust, her eyes seeing everything. She knew the peace she had sparked was fragile as a clay pot in careless hands. Yet she also knew that once a seed was planted, no matter how much shadow covered it, it could still grow if watered by courage. She spent her mornings at the river, speaking with women from both tribes as they filled their pots. She told them stories of a future where their children married across the river, where goats grazed together, where the drums of war were replaced by drums of dance. Some smiled, some laughed at her dreams, but none walked away. Slowly, the women began to share those stories with their husbands, whispering them in the quiet of night. But the warriors who hated peace grew restless. Their pride was a wound they could not heal. They believed Amara had stolen their power, that men no longer looked to them with fear but with suspicion. And so they sought to reclaim it. One afternoon, as the chiefs of both tribes met under the baobab to discuss planting season, the rebels stirred the crowd. This peace is a trap, they cried. While we sit idle, our enemies grow stronger. Look at them, do you not see the hunger in their eyes? Do you not see how they wait for us to grow soft? The crowd murmured, torn between fear and hope. Amara stepped forward, her small figure once again daring to face men whose voices roared like thunder. You call peace a trap, she said, but it is war that has trapped us for generations. War binds us in chains of anger, drags us down into graves, and leaves our children with nothing but tears. Is that the strength you want? The rebels sneered, but she did not falter. She lifted her chin, her eyes blazing. True strength is not in killing. True strength is in protecting life. If you are warriors, then be warriors for life, not death. The chiefs nodded, their faces firm. The girl speaks truth, said Amara's chief. We will give this peace a season. If the crops grow, if our people prosper, then we will know the ancestors favor it. The rebels fell silent, but their anger smoldered. They would not give up so easily. That night, Amara sat by the river, the stars reflecting in the dark water. She thought of the old seer's words, fire can warm, but it can also burn. She wondered if her fire would consume her before her dream was realized. She whispered to the river as though it carried her words to the ancestors, give me strength, not for myself, but for them. For the children. For the future. Weeks passed. The fields were planted, and for the first time in years, men from both tribes worked side by side. Their hands dug into the same soil, their sweat fell on the same earth. Slowly, their suspicion softened. Laughter began to rise among them, hesitant but real. Children carried water together, women sang as they ground grain, and the sound of drums was no longer war but celebration. Amara's heart swelled each time she saw it. She walked among the people, her presence a reminder of the fragile peace they now tasted. She knew it was not yet secure, but it was growing roots. But the rebels could not bear it. The more peace flourished, the more powerless they felt. One night, they gathered again in secret, and this time their plan was darker. If we cannot silence the girl, we will break the peace itself, one said. We will strike at their goats, burn their stores, make it look as though the other tribe betrayed us. Then the chiefs will see the truth, and war will return." Their plan was carried out swiftly. At dawn, smoke rose from the enemy's goat pens. Ash drifted across the river. Cries rang out as families discovered their food destroyed, their animals slain. Accusations flew like arrows. "They have betrayed us," shouted voices on both sides. Spears were lifted, drums beat once more, and the fragile bridge of peace trembled. Amara ran to the riverbank, her chest heaving, her voice breaking as she cried out, "Stop! Stop! This is not the work of peace, but of those who hate it." But her words were drowned in the roar of anger. Warriors on both sides prepared to strike. The air thickened with the smell of blood before it was even spilled. Then, in the midst of the chaos, the old seer Nia appeared. Her staff struck the ground, and her voice thundered above the cries. "You fools! Do you not see? The ancestors are watching. Do you think they blessed the spilling of innocent blood again and again?" Amara ran to her side, her small hand gripping the old woman's. She lifted her voice with hers, desperate, fierce. "If you kill today, you kill not only us, but the hope of every child yet to be born. Do not let the lies of a few destroy the dream of many." The chiefs raised their staffs, calling for silence. Slowly, reluctantly, the warriors lowered their spears. Murmurs rippled, doubt creeping into their fury. The enemy chief pointed at the ashes of his goats. If this was not their doing, then whose was it? Amara stepped forward, her eyes blazing. It was the work of those who cannot bear to see peace live. If you are brave, then find the true enemy, the hatred within us, not in your neighbors across the river. Her words pierced deeper than spears. The crowd shifted, uneasy. The rebels who had planned the sabotage stood among them, their faces hard but pale. Whispers grew, suspicion turning not across the river but within. For the first time, the blame did not fall on the other tribe. It fell on those who clung to hatred like a shield. That night, the rebels were brought before the chiefs. Their crimes were named, their deception exposed. Some wept in shame, others raged, but none could deny the truth. They were exiled, sent into the wilderness to carry their anger alone. The tribes remained. The peace, though shaken, held. And Amara, the girl who had stood alone at first, now found herself surrounded by voices echoing her own. Mothers, fathers, even some warriors began to speak as she did, defending peace not with spears but with words. She had become more than a child. She had become a voice that refused to be silenced. The drums of war thundered through the valley, louder each night, echoing off the cliffs as if the earth itself were impatient for blood. Men sharpened spears beneath the baobab tree, eyes burning with hatred, while young boys painted their faces with ashes, eager to join the clash their fathers promised would bring honor. The air was thick with the smell of firewood and tension, and even the cattle seemed restless, their lowing carrying unease into the night. But in the middle of this restless village lived a young girl named Ebony. Her eyes were as dark as the river at midnight, and her voice carried the softness of dawn birds. She had not yet seen her 13th summer, but she had seen enough to know that war had never brought peace. Her mother's brother had been buried in the last feud, his body wrapped in cloth, his spirit remembered only in whispered songs. Ebony often watched the women gather at dusk, weaving baskets with hands that trembled not from age but from fear of what tomorrow might steal. One evening, when the elders gathered around the fire to plan the first raid against their rival tribe across the river, Ebony slipped into the circle's edge. Shadows danced across their faces, firelight flickering in their determined eyes. The chief's voice was steady, promising victory, revenge, and land. But as the men cheered, she rose quietly, the fire painting her figure in glowing orange. "Will victory bring back the dead?" she asked, her small voice cutting into the night like a hidden blade. The men froze, startled that a child dared to speak. Murmurs rose, some laughed, some cursed under their breath, others spat into the dirt. The chief narrowed his gaze. "This is no place for children," he said. But Ebony did not step back. "I am not a warrior," she admitted, "but I am the one who carries water to your wives when they cry. I am the one who listens when mothers sing mourning songs to babies who will never know their fathers. I am the one who sees what war leaves behind when the drums stop beating." The circle fell silent. Her words floated like smoke, impossible to catch yet impossible to ignore. That night, her mother wept, fearing punishment would come for her daughter's boldness. Yet something had shifted. A few elders sat awake longer than usual, staring into the flames, wondering if truth had just been spoken through the lips of a child. Days turned into weeks. The war preparations did not stop, but whispers began. Some women quietly asked Ebony what she meant. She spoke softly to them, telling them peace was not weakness, that to be brave was not only to raise a spear but to lay it down when it would kill brothers. Soon, her words spread like wine through tall grass. Boys who had once painted their faces with ash began to hesitate. Young mothers begged their husbands not to go. Even some warriors questioned if spilling more blood would end the cycle or only feed it. One morning, as the men prepared to cross the river, Ebony climbed the tallest rock near the water. Her thin frame looked small against the rising sun, but her voice carried over the rushing current. "If you go to fight," she cried, "you will not only kill men across the river. You will kill the harvest that feeds us. You will kill the laughter of children. You will kill tomorrow." The warriors paused. The rival tribe had gathered on the opposite bank, spears ready, faces painted for war. But they too had heard her voice, carried by the wind. For a moment, time stood still. Then something unexpected happened. A woman from the other side, carrying a baby on her hip, stepped into the river. Her bare feet splashed through the shallows, and her voice joined Ebony's. "We are tired of graves," she shouted. Soon, other women followed, crossing from both sides, standing in the middle of the water, forming a living bridge of mothers, daughters, and sisters. Their bodies stood between the spears of men. Their silence was more powerful than any war cry. The men lowered their weapons, one by one. Not because they were convinced of peace by logic, but because they could not pierce the flesh of their own blood, their own wives, their own daughters. The chief growled in frustration, but even he could not order an attack when the women themselves had become the shield. From that day, the drums were not silenced, but their beat changed. They no longer called men to war but summoned the tribe to gather for planting, for harvest, for marriage dances. Ebony became the girl whose voice ended the feud. She grew into a woman respected by chiefs, for her courage was not found in a spear but in truth spoken without fear. The valley, once scarred by endless battles, healed with laughter and trade. Children grew up without learning to hate before they learned to walk. And in the stories told beneath the baobab tree, they remembered the day when men only wanted war, but a young girl's voice made peace louder than the drums.